Hi, welcome to a news episode of Sports Talk Central. I'm your host, Adeem Mahmood, with my normal co-host, Hunter. And today we're going to be talking some college football, some NFL, some baseball. So let's first start with college football. Obviously, Week 0 started. Notre Dame crushed Notre Dame won easily in Dublin. USC won with Caleb Williams starting seeing if he can get to another Heisman. We're going to talk Virginia Tech football after, but what were your thoughts? Any thoughts on these games?
It was just nice having college football back. I mean, there's a distinct smell in the air once you wake up on a Saturday, at the end of August, excuse me, early September. And it's, up north at least, you're starting to get a little chilly, but you can just tell that there's like a distinct smell. And it was great having college football back. Even though Notre Dame crushed Navy, Sam Hartman was unreal. And I think Notre Dame is going to be a problem for teams this year if Hartman can play at that level all year. He's been really good at Wake Forest for the last 4 to 5 years before he transferred to Notre Dame. They finally have solved the quarterback problem. I think if they have, with how good Marcus Freeman is as a defensive play caller, with how they have their other weapons, I think they could be a sneaky dark horse candidate to get into the playoff this year. I think that's a interesting team heading into for the rest of the season. Caleb Williams, he's trying to make history. If he wins the Heisman again this year, he will join. Do you know who the only other player is actually, I'll say this, rephrase that. Do you know who the only player is who's only won back-to-back Heisman trophies? There's only one player that's ever done it.
Oh, that's tough. I mean, I can't think of. I'm trying to think of who would what. I can't think of. Can't think of that player.
Archie Griffin, Ohio State.
Oh wow. Okay.
Only player that's ever won 2 Heismans. So, Williams has a chance. I think he's the best player in the country, in my opinion, right now. He's probably going to go number 1 overall next year if he has a similar year this year like he did last year. USC is also a mini dark horse contender for the playoff. You had a couple other games yesterday. The Ohio-San Diego State game, there was a play where a missed hold, there was a missed face mask on the same play, and then the San Diego State quarterback threw it at the ref and doinked him right in the face. And right after that, the Ohio head coach called timeout to yell at the ref for missing the penalty. So that just means college football is back right there. That game was fun. And just overall, it's awesome having college football back. Even if some of these games yesterday weren't the greatest, next week you'll see a lot of really good games. I mean, North Carolina, South Carolina playing each other. Got some other really good non-conference matchups as well. That's, I'm really hyped for that. But overall, it was just nice having it back on the television. That's just my take on it.
Yes, I think let's start off with the Notre Dame game. Obviously, look, for those who don't like, obviously the ACC hasn't been the best conference for football, so a lot of people didn't quite know Hartman, but as Virginia Tech fans, we know him. He was the quarterback for Wake Forest. He was actually really good at Wake Forest, and then transferred to Notre Dame to get. Presumably, I'm guessing that's going to increase his draft stock. That was the whole point of going to increase his draft stock. And I think he's a guy that don't be shocked if this is an early prediction, if he's like a third, 4th round pick, maybe like a guy that a team picks. Let's sits for a year and then takes a job to potentially becomes a starter. But he's definitely Notre Dame. You're right. Notre Dame has had issues with quarterback. I think they found a good quarterback. They've been good recruiting. Freeman's a great defensive coordinator. He was a good defensive coordinator. He's a good head coach. So that's there. Caleb Williams, USC. I mean, yeah, they had to win. He's definitely the big it guy. I'll be curious to see where he goes because obviously the season has started yet. So
who's going to tank for him?
Oh yeah, no. Well, here's the thing: there's who's going to tank for him, and who's going to trade their future away for him. So those are the two things we gotta consider here.
Right.
So look, I'm still thinking it wouldn't shock me if a team like the Rams, trade like their next 4 first round picks to move up to 1. It wouldn't shock me because they tried to trade for Stafford. They tried to trade Stafford this offseason. No one really wanted him. I think he's done. I don't think they want to rebuild. I think that they're going to go look at their neighborhood and then find Caleb Williams. It's gonna be really interesting. Obviously, you have the Commanders. If Sam Howell's not the guy, you got the hometown kid and Caleb Williams because he is from the DC area. So that's another team that could do it. The Buccaneers they have to be one of the favorites to go and land Williams for sure.
The Cardinals, if they don't trust Kyler coming off the injury, but I think they're going to want to give him another shot. So
yeah, and then I think Clayton Tune is not going to be the starter, the guy they drafted in the 4th or 5th round last season in the draft. So, and then the Cardinals are tanking. Like that's the obvious team that's tanking. Obviously, we'll talk about it in the NFL, but the Isaiah Simmons trade, that was such a steal. But yeah, again, you can't make too many assessments on week 0. It's just a few games, but those were just a couple of games that I've, because of the teams and the players, that I found really interesting. But also, you have Lincoln Riley as well. Obviously, the more he succeeds, if he succeeds at USC, he's already was somewhat successful at Oklahoma. You got to think about after the season, if USC is successful, then Lincoln Riley to the NFL potentially down the line. And well, let's see. Do you think Lincoln Riley will move to the NFL at some point?
Not for a while. I think he's going to want to build up that program at USC. I think he's going to be there for, I'm not going to say like a decade, but next 4 to 5 years, I would say, before he leaves to the NFL. If he can have some success there, get to the playoff, maybe win a national championship, bring USC back to prominence, I think he'll definitely have the NFL calling pretty soon.
And I think it really depends on the job opportunity, because he's not going to go to the NFL just for any job opportunity. So, look, I mean, if Mike McCarthy, if he gets canned by the Cowboys within the next 2-3 years, maybe that's an opportunity for him right there. Who knows? Again, you got other teams. Let's see what they do there. And let's move on to the Hokies. Virginia Tech starts their season next week against Old Dominion. Grant Wells has been named the starter, but Brent Pry has said you got to prepare for Grant Wells and Drone and the other quarterback. And then you also have a few players, the three receivers list for the Reese Senior Bowl, alongside Felton, Jennings, and Elaine. They were all named to the Senior Bowl watch list, and then Allen and Tisdale was also named. So, based on the what are your thoughts on some of these news before we talk about our expectations?
The receiver room is really deep this year. I mean, Ollie Jennings coming over from ODU. I mean, that's big right there. Felton, I think, is going to be a key contributor. You already said Lane. He's going to be a key contributor as well. But all those top three, I think, are going to be really good for the program this year. I don't really have too much of a problem with Grant Wells winning the starting quarterback job. I kind of see this as like a Sean Glennon, Tyrod Taylor situation from way back when Glennon was the starter for a bit. He can beat you mostly through the air, but Tyrod was that guy who can really beat you on the ground, and his arm was also really good. And then obviously Tyrod came and started and is one of the greatest quarterbacks in VT history. So maybe you can see something similar going like that, where Drones becomes a starter at some point full time, but right now they like what Grant's been doing at camp. He has a really good arm. He just has to work on his decision making, I think. Too many times this past season, he would rush some passes, throw some bad interceptions, just wasn't there. He would just try to squeeze the ball into a window where the coverage was too tight. And I hope he's learned from that. He's very good with his legs too. Not as good as Drones, but it still works. But if he can just work on his decision making, I think he'll be at least an average quarterback at the Power 5 level. We've seen his arm, how I guess it's pretty accurate. It's also an absolute cannon. So if he can work out the kinks, I think he can definitely be at least an average quarterback at the Power 5 level. Then Drones, I'm curious to see what he can do for Virginia Tech. So I don't really have too much of a problem with it, but if he does struggle, I don't want Brent Pry really messing around with that. That's for sure. Yeah, for Allen Tisdale on the defense, really enjoy him heading into the season. I like that unit. They have Antoine Powell coming in over from Florida. They lost the recruiting war the first time. They win it the second time. I think he's going to be really good for them in their front seven. We already talked about Tisdale a little bit. Their secondary, I think, is going to be decent as well. It's a very Brent Pry kind of defense when you look at it, but I think Chris Marv is going to be calling the plays full-time this year. Brent Pry has given that up after most of last season. He called the plays, but then gave it up towards the end. But, really curious to see how this team is this year. I have them at 6-6 overall, 6-6, 7-5. I don't think any better. I don't think they'll be any better than that this year. You got to be better than the 3-8 record that we saw last year, and I think they will be. They have the talent. The schedule is not that bad. If you can get back to a bowl this year, I think that'll really start getting the momentum going as they continue to recruit the state well.
Yeah, and I think part of it, and I think to your point, Grant Wells needs to improve on decision making. But if you think about last season, we really can't name the receivers other than Caleb Smith, and
Tucker Holloway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tucker Holloway as well. I mean, they were good. Some of the receivers had nice games, but they were also somewhat inconsistent. But yeah, I mean, look, I like the fact that they went out and addressed the receiver room, and they really addressed it. I think that should improve decision making. I like that comment, like especially with they're also not all the same receivers. I mean, what was it? Lane is also more of a smaller guy you can put in the slot. Ollie Jennings is more of an outside guy. So they definitely have versatility, which is great. This is also a big year for Bowen, the offense coordinator. It's a big year for him as well because now he has that versatility in the receiver room. He's the quarterback and now has to make better decisions. And then you have more talent in the quarterback room now as well because you have Grant Wells, you have Kyron Drones as your 1 and 2, but Pop Watson is more than likely your third stringer, and then Dylan Whitkey is also your fourth stringer as well. So you have athletic options for a player too. I don't expect to see Whitkey. I don't expect to see Watson so much, but compared to last season, this is a much better quarterback room for sure, and that's going to be huge. And then you're right, like it really is. They are recruiting the state well. So I agree with you. 6-6, 7-5. That's kind of where they probably will be, but I'm kind of excited to see what they do, and let's see what happens. And let's talk about the Old Dominion game. What's your preview? What's your thoughts on that game in specific?
I mean, this one's at least at Lane, so they have they never have any excuse of losing to Old Dominion overall. I know they've lost twice since they started this series. Thanks a lot for whoever signed that deal for them to go to ODU multiple times is a complete idiot. I'm sorry. Like, you don't ever, for that kind of school, I don't care who it is, you have them come to you. You are paying them to play you wherever it is, but you can pay a little bit extra money for them to come to Blacksburg. You don't need to go there. I know you get the recruiting opportunities at 757. That's big, but you're asking to get upset. And sure enough, we've seen that happen twice now at ODU. I still am mad that they just signed that series deal because every game for this series should be in Blacksburg. Maybe the occasional one can be at ODU, but it should not be like every other year where it's at, VT, ODU. This year it's at Lane. I expect VT to win. I don't think they're going to blow them out. I'm thinking something like, 31-14, 31-17, something like that. I think it's going to be a little closer than some people think it will be. But I still expect VT to win by double digits. I think they will take this one. ODU's quarterback situation is all right. I mean, this is also a team that's not good heading into this year. They were also not good last year. It's funny, the two times that VT has lost to ODU's gone on to have like absolutely terrible seasons. So, again, I don't expect it to be that good, but I expect VT to play well in this game. It's the first game of the year. Yeah, it's going to be a sold-out crowd at Lane. Grant Wells, I think, will have success throughout the air. You have the running back, Tootin, who is also very solid. I don't think enough people are talking about him enough. Another transfer. I think he's going to be really solid for the program. I don't think he's going to be like Khalil Herbert-like, transfer-wise, but I think he's going to be a lot better than I think what some people are talking about when it comes to him. Defensively, I expect them to feast in this game, but I'm expecting, 31-14, 31-17, something like that. I don't think it's going to be like a 48-7 game or whatever, but I still think BT will win comfortably.
Yeah, so that we'll talk in a couple weeks. We'll talk about the Old Dominion game and more about college football then. So let's talk about the NFL. Obviously, right now we have the preseason's over. 49ers traded their made a trade with the strange trade with the Cowboys. Running backs made Josh Jacobs got a new deal. What stood out to you about the NFL news this week?
49ers are making an awfully big bet on Brock Purdy for someone who's only played 6 regular season games, 3 playoff games. Well, not even 3, 2, not even 2.5, 2 in like a quarter, I would say. For someone who's not played even 10 NFL games, 7th round pick, it's a big bet to, just have him be your quarterback for this year and into the future. Oh, is that there? Okay. I don't know what the heck just happened there. The connection cut out for some reason. But you give up all of that draft capital, right? To get up to the number 3 spot. You take Trey Lance. You say, oh, this is the quarterback of our future. But then he never really plays. He gets banged up. Then he gets banged up again. Jimmy Garoppolo has to come in. He was never even supposed to be there this past season, but was there. And that whole situation turned into an utter disaster. And then you go out and sign Sam Darnold. You have Brock Purdy. You don't even really give Trey Lance a chance at winning the starting job back. That's the thing I think that really gets me. It's like they didn't even really give him a chance. They just said, oh, this is Brock Purdy's job because he played well in 6 regular season games. Okay, cool. I mean, it's a bet. It can go really well or it's going to go really crappy. With Lance, I expect him to, at least be a decent backup to Dak Prescott. I'm not sure if he's going to be the 2 to Prescott or is it going to be Cooper Rush? That's going to be the big question because I think it'd be one of them. But I feel for me, I would probably just have Lance as the backup and then Cooper Rush can just be the 3rd guy. But we'll have to see how they shake that depth chart out. 4th round pick. It's not really much to give up for the Cowboys. I saw the Ravens were apparently interested in Trey Lance, as were the Bills.
But he would have been competing with Josh Johnson and
Tyler Huntley.
Brown.
Or
Huntley's the number 2 quarterback no matter what.
Okay.
So I think it would have been more of if you get that 3rd quarterback in there, like Trey Lance versus Josh Johnson or Anthony Brown, you probably take Trey Lance over those if you're talking about 3rd quarterback. But also, like with the new rule, like being able to put a 3rd quarterback.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually almost forgot about that rule heading into the season. You can activate 3 quarterbacks now. So either way, Cooper Rush and Trey Lance will be activated for games. You could probably say Lance is better than Cooper Rush, but look at the sample sizes. But weird trade for the 49ers. Again, it's gonna, I don't know. Like if Brock Purdy stinks, they're kind of screwed. They have a great roster outside of their quarterback situation, but if he stinks, they're going to be up a tree there. Josh Jacobs, don't really know what the point of his holdout was. If he's just signing a 1-year deal up to $12 million, I think that was just a little strange in my opinion, but he at least gets a little bit of the money. It's not the franchise tag. He'll get to play for the Raiders this year. If he balls out again, I think he'll get a big contract next year, at least I think. But still not really sure what the point of the holdout there was. The holdout to really keep an eye on, though, Adit, is Chris Jones of the Chiefs. He has not signed his deal yet with the Chiefs. He's not going to be playing on – he's on the franchise tag, right? I believe it is. Yeah. Oh, actually, wait, no, I don't think – no. I don't think he is on the franchise tag. I think he just – he's under contract for 1 more year but wants a new deal. And there's rumors that he wants upwards of $30 million a year, which is quite a bit of cash. He's even said that he's willing to sit out till the halfway point of the season if the Chiefs do not want to sign him. Well, not the Chiefs don't want to sign. The Chiefs want to sign, but if the Chiefs don't sign him to a number that he likes. So that's one to keep an eye on as well.
What about the Bears for Chris Jones as a potential team?
You think the Chiefs would trade him? I don't know if they will.
No, if they get the right number of picks or if Chris Jones is so unhappy, I mean, I think Mahomes will sign an extension to create more cap space, personally, to fit in a Chris Jones contract. But I'll just bring up the idea because Ryan Poles, the GM of the Bears, was with Kansas City around the time. So I'm just wondering because the Bears also have, Fields is in his 3rd season, so he's due for a new contract soon. So yeah, probably not the Bears because they're going to have to pay, but. Let's see what they do there. But I think the Bears could be an interesting spot if he doesn't go there. He didn't go to Alabama. I don't believe Chris Jones went to Alabama, so let's not forget. So he's probably not going to the Commanders. Let's. So that's not gonna be. So there's some teams he could go to, and he would be a guy people would trade for, hypothetically, if he were to be made available. But I think, like I said, I think Mahomes will get an extension done to create more cap space, and then they're going to use that cap space to sign Chris Jones.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they have 2 weeks to do this at this point, but that situation's just been kind of getting a bit murky. Chris Jones has been kind of just with his comments about the situation. I mean, he went to Twitter or Instagram, one of the two, and said, like, yeah, I can afford sitting out to week 8. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you can considering the money you've made throughout your career. So he doesn't really seem bothered that he would miss time. That's the interesting thing about that. I think that's really the only big contract situation to watch before the season. So we already got the Josh Jacobs thing. Right. He led the league in yards from scrimmage last year with over 2,000, had over 1,600 rushing yards. He does that again. I think he'll get a deal next year, whether it's from the Raiders or someone else. But other than that, I don't think there's too much else from the NFL. I'll give you, your time to give your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I think with the trade, Josh Jacobs, I think it's gonna be really interesting because I keep thinking because it's running backs, you can look at a team if he has a good season, a team like Miami, a team like the 49ers, they could be looking for they could be looking at someone like Josh Jacobs. I mean, him on the Dolphins with Tyreek and Waddle, and that's just not fun.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think of the Jonathan Taylor situation?
I think the Irsay family is. I think the Colts are going to present a front as if there is a relationship to be salvaged between them. I think the reality is there is no relationship to be salvaged between them. I think that Jonathan Taylor wants out, and I think that had the Irsay family had Jim Irsay not said something about how replaceable he is, I think that relationship could have been salvaged. And obviously, this isn't an apples to apples comparison. We are going to talk about another player who's due for a contract in a different sport that is not in a great situation, that the team has not served him well. But yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor, he's going to a new team. Where that new team is, I have no idea. And I think the way he's going to look at it is, right now I know I'm one of the best running backs in the NFL. If I'm due to be a free agent, if I play out this season, then I can walk and sign a contract with another team. And I know I'll be at the top of my market, even if the running back market is decreased. If the team sucks, then I know that I'm the person that teams are going to try to trade for. And now I can use my leverage that way mid-season. I can use my leverage at the end of the season. I think he's in an enviable position. I think he's in a really good position for his future no matter what. But I don't think his future is with the Colts. And I think that that environment, I don't know how healthy that Colts environment is. So that's where I am with Jonathan Taylor. As for the other ones, Trey Lance, I do not think that the Cowboys are thinking of moving on from Dak Prescott. I do not think, even though he's due for a new contract, I think this is more so for a backup role. This is to see if they can kind of improve the quality of their backup for that's why I think that move was for. And like you said, 4th round pick doesn't really matter, because if they were to pick a backup quarterback, the highest they probably would have went next year would have been a 4th round pick. So would you rather have Trey Lance or whoever that 4th round pick would have been next season at best? So nothing really there. It was just really weird that it was like the Cowboys. I thought it was going to – I could have seen a team like the Buccaneers see if they could, because I don't think they buy into Trask. I don't know if they buy into Trask. Baker's on a 1-year deal. That could be in a situation for him. Other teams that may have had someone from the 49ers. Look, they can be interesting there. The what was it, Josh Jacobs, I kind of say my point. I think he's more his situation with the Raiders. I think he has a more favorable relationship with the Raiders than
Yeah.
Taylor does with the Colts. But Josh Jacobs is setting himself up really well. Even you can even say J.K. Dobbins is setting himself up really well. So the running back market, the big takeaway is this: the running back market is diminished right now. I wouldn't be surprised if that running back market goes back up because the quality of players, like, is it fair to say that if Jacobs, if Taylor, and if Dobbins all hit free agency next season, that this will be the best running back class in free agency over the past 5 to 10 years, or among the best?
I would say so. I don't think you can find a better running back class for a while, actually. Because a lot of these guys are usually just franchise tagged or signed.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why. So, it's going to be really interesting with running backs. That market could be really hot, and we'll see what they do there. So, we'll talk Ravens and Steelers. I'll talk a little bit about the Ravens. Obviously, since the last time we had a episode, we had the Ravens made 2 moves. Marlon Humphrey, obviously, unfortunately, had a foot injury. Apparently, he has said that he has told the coaches he could play in week 1. I don't anticipate him doing that. I anticipate him possibly playing week 3. So after the Bengals game. So it's not a major injury. They went out and got Ronald Darby from the Broncos, solid corner. And then Jadeveon Clowney they signed. And man, it felt really weird because for the past few years, it was always the Ravens and Clowney were always in the same circle, and they finally got it through this season. I like the move for Darby with Clowney. The thing I like about it is they can move him inside, they can move him outside. And here's the thing: he's not a great pass rusher. We all know this. He's not going to get 12, 15 sacks, but he's a great run defender. And I think what the Ravens are trying to do is essentially take a guy who's a great run defender and put him in situations kind of like Pernell McPhee. Like if you think about like Pernell McPhee with the Ravens, that's kind of how they're using him. Like Calais Campbell as well, because when Calais wasn't on the field last couple of years, the run defense took a hit. They essentially replaced him with Clowney. If they get 5-6 sacks out of Clowney, that'd be great. Now you also have the Ojabo and Owe, 2 really athletic pass rushers on the other end. So I like the move. If they are doing it like that, where they are treating him as a run defender who can occasionally rush the passer. But what are your thoughts on the Darby and Clowney additions for the Ravens?
I mean, they make sense. I mean, I've always thought Jadeveon Clowney super overrated, to be honest. So I'm not really that bit. I'm not worried about it. I guess. I don't know. It's something about he's just like irked me the wrong way. Just at the end of his time in Cleveland was always just super weird to me. He'll definitely help in a depth role. He can, as you said, he's not a good pass rusher anymore, but he can stop the run, which I think is what the Ravens are looking for. Someone who can come in, play. I don't think every snap, but quite a few each game. Darby, very experienced cornerback, and makes sense with Marlon Humphrey out for a little bit, but at least he's going to be back for the early portion of the season. These are 2 very Baltimore Ravens moves, but again, I'm not really super concerned about, especially the Clowney one.
Yeah, but you also got to consider we don't know what the Tyus Bowser situation looks like because he hasn't been practicing. But then again, you think about it, you bring in, they do have depth. So for Steelers, where you saw what are your thoughts on that? On them?
It's almost time to start lying, Eddie. That's what time it is. It's almost time to start lying season here. They played the Bills last week in the preseason. Play all their starters. They play against Josh Allen, and they make Josh Allen look like a Pee-wee quarterback, to be honest. And the first team offense of the preseason, 5 drives, 5 touchdowns. Kenny Pickett looks like a completely different quarterback. And yes, I know it's only preseason. It's only preseason. And it's only preseason. That said, the play that he was showing throughout the preseason was very solid. And I know they just played the Falcons. They beat them 24-0. That was their first preseason shutout in 14 years. And yeah, they played their backups. Okay, but still, you play who you're up against. And Kenny was really good. He was seeing the field well. He had some really nice deep throws, one to Johnson, one to Pickens. did something similar the week before. Just looked like a completely different quarterback. And I'll keep saying it. If he can turn into like a mini version of Justin Herbert, this team is going to be very hard to beat this upcoming season. You have Najee Harris and Jalen Warren continue to play well. That's a nice 1-2 punch at running back. I am tired of the fans saying that Jalen Warren should get all the snaps. Forgetting about Najee Harris is very stupid. They are two completely different backs. Warren is like that speedster guy. Harris can, be like I don't want to say it. Just that rumble and tumble guy. He's a bigger back.
Yeah.
So it's great to have both of them there. Receivers wise, they're solid. Pat Freiermuth at tight end. You got Darnell Washington, who's just an absolute tank there. I'm liking what I'm seeing on the offensive side of the ball. That just has to transfer over to the regular season. Hopefully it's time for Matt Canada to stop, having this team playing. I don't want to get in trouble. It's time for him to stop having this team playing terrorist football. That's what it is. That is the nicest way I can say it. It's time for him to actually come into the 21st century. And so far in the preseason, he has done that. That needs to transfer over to the regular season. Defensively, TJ Watts looked good. Cam Hayward, Nick Herbig is looking like an absolute steal from this draft this year in the third round. He's been awesome for the Steelers. Secondary has been good, though James Pierce has been kind of iffy at times. But it's hard not to like what I'm seeing right now from the Steelers. Should they be the favorites to win the AFC North? No. That's the Bengals, in my opinion. I think the Steelers are right there kind of with the Ravens for wildcard team. Maybe like a dark horse to win the AFC North if Joe Burrow goes down or something like that. But the Steelers are very much a dark horse playoff team heading into this season. And if Kenny can take that next step and that defense can stay healthy, I like them to get into the playoffs as a wild card team, even though the conference is so deep. But I know it's only preseason. You could see something else during the regular season, but I really like what I'm seeing right now. Just everything, honestly, from all three phases. I like it a lot.
Yeah, so I think Steelers are always a tough team, and they're again. I'm saying this in a positive way. They're like a cockroach. Like everything, like anything bad can happen, and they're still going to be there. And like I mean this I use that analogy in the best way possible. So, yeah. So we're gonna go to the next story, which is Actually, let's do this one. Orioles and Nationals. This is just a quick one. Unfortunately for the Orioles, Felix Bautista has a UCL injury. Now, I will say they do have depth in the bullpen, and Yennier Cano is he is a good reliever. He's going to be in the closing role. They did bring up DL Hall, who has great stuff, but he just needs to throw more strikes. You also got to keep in mind Tyler Wells, who was a starter about at the start of the season. He's going to be a reliever. He's got late inning experience. John Means just finished his third or fourth rehab outing. He's going to be a guy that can help you, give you length in the bullpen and start to push guys more there. So it sucks losing Bautista because he is one of the best closers in baseball, but at least you do have planned reinforcements coming. If Fujinami continues to pitch well, he's an option. He's got some really great stuff. And then also, look, a lot of people have crapped on the Fujinami trade. A lot of people have said he's not good. You got to keep this in mind with Shintaro Fujinami. He was in Japan. Then he went to the United States, within a year, went to the United States, and then played for the worst team in baseball on the West Coast, where none of the games mattered. Then he gets traded to the East Coast, and then not only is he on the opposite coast, and by the way, went from a starter to a reliever, he's going from games that don't matter to games that really matter in the pennant race. Oh, and by the way, English is not his first language. He's basically been playing in Japan for a long time, and he's had a couple of good outings. He's had some bad outings early on. He's given up the home run ball, but if you leave a 94-mile-per-hour splitter up high, that ball's going to get crushed. But my point is, a lot of fans have been crapping on Fujinami without realizing this guy's been going through a whole lot within a year. So I do think he is going to be good. I wouldn't trust him as a closer just yet, but I would put him in the 7th or 8th inning, and I think they can manage a little bit without Bautista for a little bit, but let's see what happens in a week or so. Um, so then obviously the reason why we want to talk Orioles and Nationals, we have two recent retirement announcements. Steven Strasburg announced his retirement, and then Adam Jones announced they announced that Adam Jones is going to retire in September. So what are your thoughts on the Steven Strasburg and Adam Jones retirements?
Just really sad, first off. I remember exactly where I was when he made his debut. My dad took me to Fuddruckers to watch him play against the Pittsburgh Pirates and just made that team look like a bunch of double-A hitters. Just the way he went out there, kicked their butts. I witnessed greatness that night, and you knew that he was just going to continue pitching like that, and he did throughout his career. He was one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball when he was in his prime and when he was healthy. His run in 2019 to help the Nationals win the World Series was tremendous. He was insane for the Nationals that run, and I don't regret paying him. I mean, I know the Nationals definitely don't. I mean, they had no choice. It's just a shame that the injuries really popped up right after. And yeah, the contract sucks that they're going to have to pay him a lot of money, but that's just that's the unfortunate side effect of it. But they don't win the World Series without him. It was awesome seeing him live up to the hype and then some. He will have his number retired by the Nationals. If he had continued on that path after the World Series run, I think he would have had a chance to be in Cooperstown and make the Baseball Hall of Fame. Don't think that's going to happen now, but I do think he's going to have his number retired by the Nationals. But I can't say enough good things about him. He really helped the team get in the right direction. He was one of the first OG Nats of their first, window opening for contention. And again, you knew you were going to witness greatness every single time he came to the mound. And I'm just grateful that I got to watch him for so many years. It's so sad that the injuries took hold of him, but I wish him the best in retirement. I hope he's able to get healthy at some point. I wish he could have pitched one more time for the Nats, but still, just an amazing career and one that I will remember very fondly with so many memories.
Yeah, and then also going with Steven Strasburg, if this guy had stayed healthy, he would have been looked at as even more as a Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. He was dominant when he was healthy. It was just that he had the one injury led to another, which led to another, which basically got him to retire. And it's unfortunate because you always hear, because baseball is one of these sports where the thing that and this is interesting, it's the thing that makes baseball really good. Some of the stuff that makes baseball really good, it's the thing that can end people's careers, and that's essentially pitching and throwing hard. And because, especially with pitching, because what pitchers do makes the game exciting, but it takes away someone's career if you don't manage it correctly. Because people like Steven Strasburg should still be pitching. He should still be dominant. He should still headline. Like it would be really great if the Nationals had Mackenzie Gore, Josiah Gray, and Steven Strasburg as your top three in a rotation, but the guy couldn't stay healthy towards the end of the season. As for Adam Jones, kind of like what you said, how Steven Strasburg was important to the Nationals. Is Adam Jones a top 5 Oriole? Probably not. Is he a top 10 Oriole? 100%. This is a guy that represented Baltimore. He was obviously one of the greatest fleeces. The Eric Bedard trade. People forget Adam Jones wasn't a top. He wasn't the top guy, but he became the top guy, and he really became the leader, and he made great catches. And yeah, and obviously in 2018 you had that whole situation of they tried to trade him to kickstart the rebuild. He refused to trade, and then eventually went to the Diamondbacks for a year, and then went to Japan for a couple years, and then apparently he repaired his relationship with the Angeloses. So it will be great to see him there. I don't think they will retire. I don't think they will retire his number. They'll be really hesitant to giving someone else the number 10. But he's a guy I could see having a statue in Camden Yards. I could clearly very well see him having a statue near at Camden Yards. I think that would be really great for him. But again, it's just this week we saw two guys from that 20, like I would say from that 2012 or 2011 to 2018 range or 2019 range, two guys from the Orioles and Nationals just who were big parts just announced their retirement. So it'll be really good. It'll be really interesting to see what they do there. Also, I did forget to mention from the Ravens side, even though this guy technically has not retired yet, Terrell Suggs will be inducted to the Ravens Ring of Honor in October, week 7. So that's so a couple of Baltimore.
A lot of fond memories of that guy. Ugh.
Yeah. So so now we're going to talk about the thing I was hinting at before, which was Shohei Ohtani. So they didn't. So this was a team that tried to go for it. They made trades, gave up prospects. Now Ohtani was missing some. Like he left starts. The last few starts he was missing and missing time. It's like, oh, he's fine. Well, he has an UCL injury, which is often a precursor to Tommy John. Which, for a two-way player, now you're talking about DH. He's still going to try to play as a hitter, but this would be his second. If he has to go through Tommy John, his second Tommy John surgery. This is, and right as he is about to hit free agency, how much do you think this will hurt his free agent market and trajectory of his career?
I don't think it'll hurt it, too much. I still think he's going to get the richest contract we've ever seen in baseball. I mean, hitter and a pitcher. It's just unfortunate that because the Angels wanted to get in so bad, he blew his arm out. That's why he did it. I mean, if they weren't, I guess, ignorant to the fact that they weren't going to get in, does he get injured here? I don't think so. So
also, Trout is on the IL again. He came off the IL, played a game, and then went back on the IL.
It's just unfortunate that, again, like I feel like they rushed him back, and then with Ohtani, they were pitching him and playing him so much just because they want to get in so bad to get Ohtani to stay, that now you've worn him down, and now he's going to pitch for the rest of the year. He can only DH now, I believe, right? He can only really do that. So, I mean, he can only help you in one way, just because you decided to pitch him so much. So I still think he's going to get quite a bit of money when free agency rolls around, excuse me. I mean, I just, with how good he is, I can't see teams not wanting to pay him, because I think he's going to get quite a bit of money.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to, I think it is going to scare off some teams though, because if he does need Tommy John, then he's not going to be available really until 2025. And now you're talking about DH. A team is going to go and pay him money. But look, I mean, that's why you have to know your expectations. That's why, and I've said this before, the Orioles tried to extend their window in 2018. Now, granted, a few things bounced their way, but you're going to lose Ohtani this offseason. And especially with the news if they tried to get him to take an MRI like in July or something like that. It's just unfortunate, and this is one of the worst things we've seen in baseball. Like, the team had Mike Trout and Ohtani, and still we saw no playoff series between them. Like, we have to go to
that's embarrassing, is what that is. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, like, and you can't even use the excuse of, well, the Astros are in that division and they ruled baseball. They're still a wild card. Like, they couldn't even get into the wild card. Like, that's And look, and I don't know if it's an Artie Moreno thing. I don't know if it's an ownership problem, but something went wrong, and it just, they didn't have to write baseball people. I don't know. And then also they didn't have to write baseball people there. I mean, you look at that situation. I mean, the White Sox situation is really bad there, because
there's rumors they may move the team.
Oh, and by the way, do you buy into these rumors? Like, also, before, and we'll talk. This is finished the Ohtani talk, but I want to hear your thoughts on this. Like, I don't buy the Orioles moving to Nashville, but it's also like the Rays could be moving to Nashville. the White Sox could be moving to Nashville. It's like, what are your thoughts on Nashville? It's like teams can move, and it's always Nashville. It's never like South Carolina. It's never like West Virginia.
Yeah.
It's never like Portland. But what are your thoughts on, one, the White Sox relocating to Nashville, Milwaukee relocating to Nashville, and also Nashville being the area that every
I
team
think Nashville will get a team at some point. I just think it's going to be when the MLB expands there. I don't think you're going to see a team move to Nashville anytime soon. The White Sox, yeah, I mean, I wrote about it for work this week. They want a new stadium deal, or they think they just want a new stadium in general, just because this one is a bit older. It's gone through a lot of renovations. You have the Chicago Bears situation, where I think they're maybe going to get a new stadium deep because Soldier Field has just been around for so long. So they're kind of looking at that situation. They're being like, okay, could we maybe get a new stadium? And I think they want it built somewhere else because maybe the location where the White Sox play is not the greatest in Chicago. So I kind of think it's more likely that they play somewhere else outside of Chicago, not like outside the city limits, but like, you know, just in the vicinity of Chicago, than it is of them moving to Nashville. Same with all these other teams. I think Nashville is going to get a team at some point, and you know why. There's a lot of rumors. Nashville's a great sports city. Let's be real here. I mean, you have, you know, Vanderbilt plays there. Yeah, you have the Nashville Predators. You have the Tennessee Titans. They play in Nashville. Or you said Vanderbilt as well. 3 teams there, 1 college, 1 baseball, 1 NFL. I mean, I know it's not Nashville, but you have the Memphis Grizzlies. They play in Memphis, which, you know, I think probably people in Nashville, I would say probably root for the Grizzlies, or at least a decent amount of them. You bring a baseball team there, whether it's relocation or expansion, that's only going to up that sports city even more. So I do think there will be a team there at some point, but I think it's going to have to be like an expansion.
Yeah, but also, like, what are your thoughts on? We'll end the show on this. Like, is there a city or an area that isn't talked about much that you think would be another spot for relocation or expansion, like West Virginia or South Carolina, or like, I know Portland's been talked about, Austin's been a potential mention as well. But is there a team like South Carolina? I'm a little surprised why people don't bring up like places like South Carolina or West Virginia as
No, those two work. I mean, why not Oklahoma City?
Oklahoma
I think,
as well.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I think Oklahoma City. I think that makes sense. I mean, you already have the Thunder there, of course. You add another team there. I mean, that only grows that city, you know, sports wise at least.
Nebraska, there might be something in Nebraska. I mean, it's just
yeah.
odd. It's just really odd. It's always like, oh, a team could move. Where could they move? Nashville. It's like, I get it. Nashville's fantastic. It's like you got good music. You got good teams. You got several teams, but still, it's like, guys, there's like 50 states in the world. I get it. You don't want a 3rd or 4th team in California or Texas or Florida or New York. There's so many teams in the Midwest you could just focus on. It's just Oregon. I mean, Portland's an interesting spot, but yeah. So we'll return in a couple of weeks. We'll recap Virginia Tech. We'll recap Virginia Tech, and then we'll talk a little bit about previewing September baseball as well as the NFL.
We'll preview week 1 and just the season in general, probably.
Yep.
So yeah, that'll do it for this one. Talk to you all soon.
See you.